Today we are going to learn indirect proportion, or it's also called inverse proportion. This is connected to increase in ratio and decrease in ratio. And I did a video on increase in ratio and decrease in ratio. How to identify an increase in ratio and a decrease in ratio. And I gave you a formula that you can use to identify, that you can use, that if you use that formula, it will take you even less than 10 seconds to identify an increase in ratio and a decrease in ratio. So, if you haven't listened to a video about increase in ratio and decrease in ratio, I would advise you first listen to that video before you come and learn indirect proportion, and which is also called inverse proportion. This is a question that is highly examinable. It is introduced in grade 8 and also in high school. It is highly examinable. And most students confuse. They don't know even how to go about it. But today, you will be confident. When you see such a question, you will be confident from the word go. You won't start thinking like, you won't have doubts. I will show you in such a way that all doubts, you will not have doubts when tackling this question. Because you already know the procedure, how to go about it. You have the foundation on increasing ratio and decreasing ratio. So you can be able to interpret this question. I told you my goal is to help you understand mathematics in such a way that you are able even to teach others in your class. You will understand mathematics in such a way that you are going to teach others. You will not only you go through the school, you tick the box without understanding. You know there are students who get A's. You get an A, and when you are told to explain how you did your exam, or you are asked by another student, you got an A. Please help me solve this question. You are not able to do it. I want you to understand. It means you didn't deeply understand the concept. My main goal is to help you understand the concept, that you don't have to cram. You have already mastered the concept. So today we are going to learn indirect proportion, which is also called inverse proportion. I know most of you don't know such a question is under this topic. Indirect proportion, or also known as inverse proportion. When you see such a question, it is under this topic. I know most students don't know, but this question is under indirect proportion and inverse, which is also called inverse proportion. So when you get such a question and you fail, it means you haven't understood the subtopic on indirect proportion, which is also called inverse proportion, and it is a topic under proportion. So you go back to the book, you look at the topic on proportion, then you look there and you see a subtopic on indirect proportion, which is also known as inverse proportion. So if you fail such a question, you must go back to your books on this topic, then you deeply understand the topic. But I am making it easier for you because I'm going to explain in such a way that you are going to understand. You don't have to go back to the books. If you listen to my video, you are going to understand. And I'm going to help you to deeply understand math concept. I will do 2 questions during this session. I will do 2 questions. The first question is this one. So be with me up to the end of the lesson. These 2 questions, I have chosen these 2 questions. This is the first question and I have another one. These 2 questions, mostly the examiner will give you a question that looks like this. And even for the second question, the examiner will give you the question that looks like that. Okay? So I have chosen 2 questions where the exam rotates. Okay? If you understand these 2 questions, you can tackle any question on inverse proportion, which is also known as indirect proportion. So I have done my research, read different books. So I have come up with 2 questions. These 2 questions, if you understand them, you are going to tackle any question on proportion. So I will start with this one, but I have another question also that will help you understand this topic. These 2 questions carry the full topic. It will help you understand the whole topic on inverse proportion and indirect proportion. Okay? I'm starting with this question. Be with me up to the end of the lesson, because you are going to understand indirect proportion and inverse proportion. Okay? Listen each and every, be attentive, each and every thing I am saying. Write somewhere, have a notebook as you listen to this video. Write the keywords as I will tell you. Okay? Write the keywords. Understand. You can write to me on the comment section if you have understood what I have taught. Do you understand most of it? Have you understood? Did you understand everything? That is what I want you to do. I want you to understand everything that I am teaching. That is my goal. Let me know where you have not understood. Comment. Either you have understood everything or you have understood most of it and the parts that you need help. You can write on the comment section. So, this is the question that we are starting with, and I have another question that I will use to help you understand indirect proportion, which is also known as inverse proportion. So when you see these 2 words, don't be scared. Okay, I am going to show you this. The foundation is, I told you how to identify an increasing ratio or a decreasing ratio. Okay, so listen to that video, it will help you. So on this question, let me read the question. 5 taps takes 20 minutes to fill a tank. How long will it take 4 taps running at the same rate to fill the tank? Okay, this is a question on ratios. It is a question on ratios. First of all, you must know such a question is a question on ratios. This is a question on ratio of decreasing ratio and increasing ratio. It's a question on ratios. We have been told 5 taps takes 20 minutes. Okay, what about 4 taps? What do you do? I will help you the first method. I hope you are with me up to that point. Okay, I hope you are with me up to that point. I want us to solve this question. Okay, here we have taps and we have time. Okay, we have taps and time. And the formula for calculating inverse and also known as indirect proportion, for the ratio, if we have ratio of 2 quantities, we have 2 quantities. Okay, we have 2 quantities here. The formula is like this: y is to x. If the first quantity is the y is to x, the second one is x is to y. The second one is second quantity. Okay, let me explain. In inverse, which is also known as indirect proportion, we have 2 quantities. We are comparing 2 ratios. Okay, if the first quantity, like here we have taps and we have time. We have taps and time. So the first quantity, if maybe the taps, if the taps, the ratio is y is to x, the second quantity will be x is to y. Let me demonstrate using this question. What do I mean? 5 taps takes 20 minutes to fill a tank. How long will it take 4 taps running at the same rate to fill the tank? Now I want to help you understand. Okay? You are comparing 2 quantities. Like you are going to answer this question in a good way. It is not about cramming. It's about understanding. I want to explain what I have already written of the formula for this inverse proportion, also known as indirect proportion. Is when we have two quantities, we are comparing two quantities, but if the first quantity ratio is y is to x, the second one is x is to y. So here we have the first quantity. The first quantity is the tap. The first quantity is the tap. The first quantity is the first quantity is the tap. The second quantity, you can look at it. The second quantity is time. The second quantity is time. We have the first quantity tap, the second quantity time. We have two quantities. You are going to understand this topic in such a way that you cannot even fail to understand the way I'm going to explain it. Okay, now we have two quantities, tap and time. When looking at this question, we are comparing two quantities. Okay, so we have tap. We start with the tap. We have 5 taps which have decreased to 4 taps now. We have been told about 4 taps. It decreases from 5 taps to 4 taps. Okay, a decrease in ratio is written like this. You write 4 is to 5. In a decreasing ratio, you start with the small one to the big one. You start with the small one. Let me use simple language. If you are asked about a decreasing ratio, you start with small one, then big one. Okay? It has decreased to 4 from 5. You start with small one to the big one. That is a decreasing ratio. Let me write it there. Let me lab here so that you can see. I have already explained to you what is a decreasing ratio and why I've written it decreasing ratio. We have two quantities. The other one is time. In inverse proportion or indirect proportion, when we have a ratio of y is to x, the ratio for the second quantity is x is to y. So here we have tap. Y is to x is 4 is to 5, which is a decreasing ratio. So it means the other ratio in inverse proportion or indirect proportion, if the first ratio is a decreasing ratio, the second ratio is a increasing ratio. If the first ratio is a decreasing ratio, the second ratio is a increasing ratio. If the first ratio is an increasing ratio, the second ratio is a decreasing ratio. So here we have a decreasing ratio, and I have told you why I have written 4 is to 5. This is a decreasing ratio because we are moving from 5 taps now here to 4 taps. So it is a decreasing ratio. And the way we write it, we start with 4 because we start with new, then origin. I hope you are with me up to that point. So for time, this is a representative of y is to x. So for time, it will be 5 is to 4, which is an increasing ratio. Increasing ratio. I hope you are with me up to that point. For time, the ratio will be 5 is to 4 because in inverse proportion or indirect proportion, if the first ratio is a decreasing ratio, the second ratio is an increasing ratio. So we had y is to x is 4 is to 5, then we have 5 is to 4. And the reason why we are writing 5 or 4, it is according to this question. This is according to this question. Okay? So we have been asked, we have now the ratio for tap and for time. Okay, so how now when you have done up to that point, you have, it's like the question is almost complete. Now we are left to do the answer. What's the answer? How long will it take 4 taps running at the same rate to fill the tank? To fill the tank automatically. If 5 taps had filled the tank, takes 20 minutes to fill the tank. Now the taps have decreased. Already you already know that time will increase. If the tap have decreased, time will increase. So we are going to use increasing ratio to solve the question. So what do? Let me do it here. We are going to use increasing ratio. So it's 5/4 times 20 by 4 1 by 4 5 is equal to 5 times 5, 25 minutes. 25 minutes. 25 minutes. It makes sense because if 5 taps can take 20 minutes, 4 taps can take 25 minutes because time will increase. Time will increase if the taps have decreased. I hope you are with me up to that point. This is a question on increasing ratio and decreasing ratio. And I told you, use this formula. This is the formula for inverse proportion and indirect proportion. Okay? Look for what you have been given. You have been given taps and you have been given taps and taps. So you are looking for time. That is what you have been given. So you are going to use that ratio as a decreasing ratio and an increasing ratio. I hope you are with me up to that point. Don't get confused. Please let me know where you need help. Even those who have understood everything that I have taught, please write there that I understand. Self-assess yourself. After listening to this video, have you understood everything that I have taught? This is the first question I'm looking at. I am going to help you understand even more on indirect proportion and inverse proportion because I'm going to do another question. These 2 questions, the examiner will always rotate there. The questions will come from there. I told you in mathematics, it's not about cramming the question. If you come and cram the example I have given you here, it won't help you. It's about understanding. This question is helping you understand. You don't cram the question because you may not find a question like this talking about tanks and taps, minutes. Maybe you'll get something else. So in mathematics, it's not about cramming. Don't cram. Don't cram the example I am giving you. I want this example to help you understand the concept. That is my goal. That this example will help you understand the concept. Okay? This is the second question that I will be looking at on this subtopic on indirect proportion, which is also known as inverse proportion. And this question, you have to be more attentive than the first question I did. You have to be more attentive on this question because I'm going to use method 1 and method 2 to solve this question. Also, this question will help you even understand more about proportion, more about inverse proportion, which is also known indirect proportion. So, if you want to understand this question, you have to pay. You have to pay for you to understand this question. And I mean, you have to pay attention. Please, fasten your seatbelt, sit back, be attentive, have a notebook, have somewhere to write on the keywords, on what you need to. I will be telling you where you need to emphasize so that you get this question, you master the concept. Okay? In mathematics, I told you it's not about cramming. Don't cram this example. I want you to understand the concept. What are you expected to do when you come across such question? It's not about, don't cram the example. I want you to understand the concept, master the concept. So for those people who like cramming the question, in mathematics, it won't help you. Those are the people, when you bring another question, but it is asking the same concept, they cannot even answer. Okay? Someone got an A, but he or she cannot even explain to anyone about the question that he got. He got the question right, but he cannot explain. My student, I don't want my student to be like that. That they solved the question very well, they got the correct answer, but they cannot even teach others. They cannot even tell you how they did the question. Okay? So don't cram the example. Understand the concept. And you are going to thank me later. So I will be doing this question. This is the second question. I have done the first question. Please listen to the video to get the first question. This is the second question. Let me read the question. Please let us read together. 36 men can cultivate a piece of land in 20 days. How many more men working at the same rate would be needed to cultivate the same piece of land in 15 days? I have repeated this one. I have repeated these two. Let me just rub it. Okay, and let me read it again. 36 men can cultivate a piece of land in 20 days. How many more men working at the same rate would be needed to cultivate the same piece of land in 15 days? Okay, I hope you are with me up to that point. I told you the first thing to ask yourself when given a mathematics question is to ask yourself, is there a formula that we use to solve the question? I told you there is a formula that we use to solve indirect proportion or inverse proportion. This formula is from increasing and decreasing ratio. So we have the formula. I'm starting with method 1. I will do method 2 also. Method 1. Let me write the formula, then I'm going to explain. Although I did explain when I was doing the first one. The formula is y is to x is the first quantity, or the first ratio. So when you have y is to x, the second ratio will be x is to y, which is the second quantity. Okay? So if the first ratio is an increasing ratio, the second ratio is a decreasing ratio. So here we have the first quantity and the second quantity. We are comparing two ratios. We are comparing men with number of days. Okay? We have number of days and we have men. So what we have been given is number of days. We have 20 days, then it decreases to 15 days. We have 20 days, it decreases with 15 days. So we have been given days. So we have the ratio for days. We have 20 days, then it decreases to 15 days. So the first ratio, looking at this question, the first ratio looking at this question, it's 20 days, it decreases to 15 days. So a decreasing ratio is written like this. You start with small, then big. New, then original. So the new is, now we have been told 15 is to 20. 15 is to 20. That's the first ratio. Okay. The number of days have decreased from 20 days to 15 days. It means the number of men will increase. Okay. So we have the first ratio. The first ratio is number of days, and it is a decreasing ratio. Let me explain. The first ratio, looking at this question, is 15 to 20. And it is a decreasing ratio. Why? We are moving from 20 days to 15 days. Okay? And I told you how do you write a decreasing ratio? When someone moves from a bigger number to a small number, you start with the new one, the current one to the old one. That is the original. So it's 15 is to 20. That is a decreasing ratio. You start with new, then original. Even for increasing ratio, you start with new, then original. So the new one is small and the original one is big, obvious, according to decreasing ratio. So this is number of days. It is decreasing from 20 to 15 days. That is the number of days. So what about the second ratio? We have said if the first ratio is y is to x, the second ratio is x is to y. So the first ratio was a decreasing ratio. So the second ratio is the second ratio is 20 is to 15. I hope you have understood. If the first ratio is x is to y is to x, the second ratio is x is to y. So in our question here, the first ratio is 15 is to 20. So the second ratio is 20 is to 15. And 20 is to 15, when you look at it, is this, are you able to identify? 20 is to 15, is it an increasing ratio or a decreasing ratio? I showed you how to identify whether a ratio is a decreasing ratio or an increasing ratio. When you look at this automatically is a increasing ratio. You start with new, then old. When you start with a big number, this is automatically an increasing ratio. And I told you how to identify an increasing ratio and a decreasing ratio. But I will not get tired of repeating. Let me help you understand. A decreasing ratio starts with the small number, then big number. An increasing ratio starts with big, then small. I am using simple language. Let me now use a little complicated language. Okay? So for decreasing ratio, you start with new, then old. The new one is 15. We are now asked about 15. Then we are coming from 20. Okay? For an increasing ratio, you start with new, then original. It's the same thing. You are starting with new. The new is 20, then 15. So for an increasing ratio, you start with a big number, then small one. For decreasing ratio, you start with a small number, then big one. I hope that is simple, a simple language that everyone can understand. Okay? So because the main goal is to understand. Okay? So we have gotten the first ratio, which is 15 is to 20. Number of days we have been given. We are changing from what to what, so we use the number of days. So the second ratio is 20 is to 15. It is increasing. So we will use the second ratio because the number of men are increasing. Obvious, because the number of days have decreased, number of men will increase. So solution here, we are going to use, what's the solution? The solution here, we are going to use the increasing ratio. When you convert, okay, let me tell you here, When you convert a ratio into a fraction, you just write 20 over 15. When you convert this one into a fraction, it is 15 over 20. So for the increase in ratio, because that is what we are using, because the number of men are going to increase, so we use the increase in ratio. So when you convert this into a fraction, you get 20 over 15 times now 36. The one you have been given here, 36 men. So you get by 5 3, by 5 4. So you get by 3 1, by 3 12. You get 48 men. Okay, you get 48 men. You get 48 men. But this is not the answer for this question. You still need to do something else. Why? Let us read here. How many more men working at the same rate? How many more men working at the same would cultivate the land? How many more? This one. How many more men? How many more? Look at this. How many more men? How many more men working at the same rate? So the answer is we had 36 men. Now it is 48. How many more men? It is 48 minus 36. We get 48 minus 36. We get what? We get 48 minus 36. We get used to calculator until we are not confused. Can you just write there? What's 48 minus 36? Please let me know. It is what? It is 12. 12 men. 12 men. Okay? 12 men. 48 minus 36. I told you this question. When you have gotten 48 men, it is not the answer. The answer is 12 men, because how many more men working? So, what does this tell you? It tells you what does it tell you? You have to be very careful when tackling mathematics questions. Please read the instruction. Don't assume. Read until the end of the question. Read the question minimum 3 times before you start answering. Okay? And even as you answer, maybe you have a question that is asking you to do ABC. Answer according to what you have been asked. Okay? Don't answer according to what you think you are supposed to be asked. So it tells you that you have to be attentive. Sometimes you'll be asked how many more. Sometimes you'll be asked how many. Without that how many more, the more will not be there. So be attentive. You can answer how many more, and even the one that doesn't have how many more. So I am going to give you something else. I'm going to use method 2. I'm going to use method 2 to answer this question. Please be with me up to the end of the lesson. This is I was doing method 1. So method 2. Method 1, we are using increase in ratio and decrease in ratio. The formula for indirect and direct proportion. So you can use method 2, whereby you just write 36 men can take 20 days. What about one man? One man is 36 times 20, which is 720 days. One man will take 720 days to cultivate the rad. Okay, I hope you are with me up to that point. This is method. I didn't write there. This is method 2. This is method 2 that you can use to answer this question. You can use method 2 to answer this question. How do you go about it? You just write that 6 men can take 20 days to cultivate the rad. What about 1 man? 1 man can take how many days to cultivate the rad? It is 36 times 20, which is 720 days. Okay? Then what about if 1 man takes 720 days? What about 15 days? How many men do we need to take? How many men do we need to take 15 days to cultivate the rad? What about 15 days? How many men do you need? So it is 1 of a set of a what about 36 men? 36 men. If 1 man can take 720 days, what about 36 men? 36 men is 720 divided by 36. Okay? I'm saying this is method 2. You can use this method. 36 men takes 20 days. What about 1 man? 1 man can take 720 days. Okay? What about how many men takes 15 days? How many men takes 15 days? So it's 720 divided by 15. We get 48. 48. So it is 48 men. I hope you get it. Okay? So the method 2, you just look for 1 man. How many days that one man uses to cultivate the rad? It is 720 days. It is that 6 times 20. Okay? So if 1 man can take 720 days, how many men can take 15 days? It is 48. You divide by 15. So 48 men. So we have gotten the same answer. But I would advise you to use the formula for increasing and decreasing ratio so that you don't get confused. And even if You are going to use, you can also use this one. There is no harm. I hope you have understood. When you get 1 man can use 720 days, now you divide with what you have been asked. The 15. You have been asked about what about 15 days. You divide by 15. I hope you are with me up to that point. You divide by 15 because it is what you have been asked. How many men can take 15 days to cultivate the rad? So you use 15 because that's what you have been asked. I hope you are with me up to that point. So I hope you have understood. I will be doing even another question on this topic. Please subscribe because you are going to get to understand mathematics in such a way that you don't need to cram the question. I will help you understand in such a way that even if someone else asks you, can you help me understand this question? You are going to help them understand that question. You are not going to be those students who get an A and they cannot even explain even to one student how they got it correct. You have to be able to teach someone how you got it correct. That is how that it means now you have mastered the concept. But I don't want to raise students that will only get the question correct, but they cannot be able to explain to another person how they got it correct. Are you with me? That is the reason why I'm telling you to subscribe to my YouTube channel.